Imagine this: a medieval court in disarray, the kingdom's most learned advisors baffled by a seemingly unsolvable riddle, their complex logic and meticulous planning leading nowhere, only to have the court jester, with his ridiculous antics and nonsensical pronouncements, stumble upon the solution. What if what we perceive as foolishness is actually a form of profound wisdom, a key to unlocking perspectives that are invisible to the most disciplined minds? This scenario, seemingly absurd, highlights the paradox at the heart of the fool archetype, a figure that has fascinated and perplexed humanity for centuries. The fool is not simply a symbol of idiocy or simple-mindedness, but rather an embodiment of a unique kind of wisdom that is often disguised in unconventional and sometimes chaotic behavior. The fool operates outside the bounds of societal norms and constraints, using counterintuitive actions to reveal hidden truths and challenge our deeply ingrained beliefs. How can someone be both foolish and wise? Is the line as clear as we've been led to believe? Our journey today is about this paradox. We will be exploring the hidden potential within this often misunderstood figure. We'll question not only the nature of the fool, but the nature of wisdom itself, asking ourselves whether our conventional notions of intelligence and insight might be far too limiting. This exploration will follow a recurring pattern, the juxtaposition of folly against wisdom. We'll examine examples of what society typically views as wise, behavior-structured logic, meticulous planning, conformity to established norms, and then we will contrast these examples with the seemingly random and illogical actions of the fool. Consider, for example, a rigidly structured scientific experiment versus the seemingly chaotic creative outburst of a musician. This consistent pattern will help us see the limitations of conventional thinking. By challenging our assumptions, we open the door to a much wider range of possibilities. The fool, in this view, becomes a guide to understanding a hidden potential within ourselves and in the world around us. The presence of the fool isn't confined to any single culture or era. It's a universal archetype found across the globe and throughout the annals of history. From the court jesters of medieval Europe, who held a unique license to speak truth to power through comedy, to the trickster gods of ancient mythologies, these figures all embody a blend of seemingly foolish behavior and profound insight. Think of the clown figure in indigenous cultures, whose seemingly silly antics often carry deep spiritual significance. Or consider the ancient Greek satyrs, beings who challenge the rigidity of societal conventions through their free and unrestrained behavior. Each of these examples hints at the pervasive power of the fool and the importance of understanding its many paradoxical dimensions. Understanding the fool is not merely an academic exercise, it's a path to profound personal growth and self-awareness. By engaging with the fool archetype, we challenge our conventional perceptions of success and failure, encouraging us to question our most deeply held assumptions about what it means to live a good life. What if our fear of appearing foolish is the very thing that holds us back from achieving our true potential? What if the qualities we most despise in ourselves, the very things we call foolish, are actually the seeds of our greatest strengths? Embracing our own foolishness is not a descent into chaos, but rather a journey towards greater authenticity and self-fulfillment. The fool embodies a willingness to take risks, to challenge established norms, and to embrace the unconventional. And by learning to embody these traits within ourselves, we can overcome our own self-imposed limitations. Integrating the fool archetype can help us overcome our creative blocks, embrace our imperfections, and find a kind of joy that is simply impossible while living in rigid conformity. The fool, therefore, is not just a character. It's a guide to living a more authentic, more vibrant life. Furthermore, understanding the fool can help us confront our own shadow side, the unconscious aspects of our personality that we often hide or deny. The traits that we judge most harshly in others may in fact be the very traits that we most deeply bury within ourselves. The fool allows us to see these hidden parts of ourselves, not as something to be ashamed of, but as a source of unique potential. In this way, understanding the Fool becomes a crucial part of our journey to wholeness and self-acceptance. This is about acknowledging our complexities and embracing all of our attributes, even the ones we think are bad. Our central theme today is the importance of embracing our own imperfections, challenging the rigid confines of conventional thinking, and learning to seek wisdom in the most unexpected places and people. This is a journey into the uncharted territory of the unconscious mind, and it is also a journey of self-discovery that reevaluates our own unique place in the world. We will discover that the path toward our true selves might not be as clear or as straightforward as we thought. To better understand the Fool archetype, it's important to explore its role within the framework of Jungian psychology. Carl Jung posited the existence of archetypes, universal patterns of behavior and experience that reside in the collective unconscious. These archetypes are not merely abstract concepts, but are living forces that shape our thoughts, feelings, and actions. The Fool, as one of these archetypes, provides a powerful lens through which we can better understand our own unconscious minds and how they influence our actions. Jung himself believed that these forces are essential for understanding human behavior. One of the most important Jungian concepts for understanding the Fool is the shadow. The shadow represents the unconscious aspects of our personality that we often reject or deny. It is the hidden, darker side of ourselves that contains both negative and positive potential. The Fool, in his chaotic, unpredictable nature, embodies aspects of the shadow. He reveals traits that most people suppress, and in this way challenges our conscious idea of who we think we are. By confronting this shadow, we can gain a much deeper understanding of ourselves. Thus, the Fool becomes a catalyst for personal transformation. Our analysis of the shadow hints at another crucial concept, that of individuation. Individuation, in Jungian psychology, is the process of becoming a whole and integrated person. It involves confronting and integrating all aspects of the personality, including the shadow. The Fool, with his unconventionality, his embrace of the chaotic, and his willingness to challenge the established order, embodies many aspects of this process of individuation. We will be exploring the full extent of this idea as our journey progresses, and we will see how these ideas provide a deeper understanding of the Fool's nature. Another recurring pattern we will examine is the tension between chaos and order. While society often strives for order, stability, and predictability, the Fool thrives in chaos. The Fool's actions often challenge the established order, disrupting the rigidity of conventional systems and revealing new and innovative solutions through his seemingly random behavior. Think of the great creative geniuses of history whose innovative bursts seem to come from nowhere, or a technological breakthrough that is born out of seemingly random experiments. The Fool, in this sense, is the catalyst for change and innovation. But what if our notions of what constitutes wisdom and folly are deeply flawed? What if our societal standards of intelligence and success are not only limited, but actively prevent us from realizing our full potential? What if the very traits we try to suppress are actually the key to unlocking our creative genius and finding a more authentic path? These are questions that challenge our deepest assumptions about ourselves and the world around us. What if the answers we are seeking are found in the places we have been trained to ignore? What if the most profound insights are not found in meticulously planned logical systems, but in the seemingly random and nonsensical actions of the Fool? What if the path to enlightenment involves a willingness to embrace our own perceived foolishness and challenge the accepted wisdom of the day? The Fool represents a challenge to the very foundation of our conscious perceptions. The Fool's unconventional behavior challenges the very fabric of social norms, suggesting the importance of individuality and the limitations of conformity. While society often values conformity and adherence to established rules, the Fool urges us to step outside of these boundaries and to embrace our uniqueness. This challenge, often viewed as disruption, is essential for both personal growth and the progress of society itself. Conformity can often lead to stagnation, whereas the kind of disruption the fool represents can often be the catalyst for new growth. We will explore historical examples, both real and fictional, of individuals who embodied the paradoxical wisdom of the fool, from literary characters who defy the rigid conventions of their times, to real-life figures who challenge the expectations of the established world. These individuals, who often defied norms, may have found a path to fulfillment that transcends the standard conventions of their respective societies. These are the types of figures we will be exploring as our journey continues, and the lessons they may reveal. The fool's paradoxical nature, the simultaneous presence of folly and wisdom, finds an interesting parallel in the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche, with his radical questioning of traditional values, embraced chaos and the irrational as powerful forces that could lead to creativity and self-discovery. He argued that the constraints of rigid, rational thought often stifle the human spirit, and that the path to true self-understanding requires us to venture beyond the boundaries of conventional wisdom. This idea is particularly relevant to the fool, a figure who, through his apparent foolishness, reveals the limitations of our most cherished beliefs and structures. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the individual who transcends the limitations of conventional morality and creates their own values, closely mirrors the fool's journey towards individuation by embracing the chaotic nature of reality. Consider, for example, Nietzsche's critique of the herd mentality, his idea that society often values conformity over individuality, and how this mirrors the fool's unique perspective. The fool, like Nietzsche's Übermensch, has the ability to step outside the herd. This ability gives them clarity. This echoes our earlier theme of chaos versus order, revealing how strict order can become a cage, limiting our capacity for new ideas and perspectives, which, in turn, limits our capacity for true individual expression. The Jungian concept of the shadow provides another crucial framework for understanding the paradoxical nature of the fool. The shadow, as we have previously discussed, embodies the unconscious aspects of our personality that we often deny or reject. These foolish traits, the recklessness, the impulsiveness, the willingness to defy social conventions, are actually a key component of our psyche, possessing great potential for creativity and self-awareness. For example, a person might suppress their impulsiveness, seeing it as a weakness, while that same impulsiveness could be the key to spontaneous creativity and joy. Or consider how recklessness, when properly understood, can manifest as courageous risk-taking. The shadow is not just a repository for negative traits. It's a source of untapped energy that, when integrated, can lead to greater wholeness. This is how we build upon our pattern of light versus dark, showing how embracing the darkness of our shadow can paradoxically be the very path to wholeness and self-acceptance. By integrating these seemingly negative attributes, we move closer to an authentic sense of self, much like the fool, whose embrace of these often rejected traits gives him his unique perspective. The fool, in many ways, embodies the shadow itself, and thus becomes a guide for our own journey into the hidden parts of our psyches. Furthermore, the fool's seemingly random actions and mistakes can be viewed as a form of nonlinear thinking, a method of problem-solving that operates outside of the rigid structures of traditional logic. Traditional linear thought processes often follow a predictable step-by-step pattern, which, while useful for certain tasks, can lead to a kind of stagnation. Nonlinear thinking, on the other hand, is more intuitive and associative, allowing for connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. Consider the story of the discovery of penicillin. Alexander Fleming's mistake of accidentally contaminating a Petri dish with mold was not the result of structured planning, but instead a foolish accident. However, this mistake led to one of the greatest breakthroughs in modern medicine. The fool, therefore, embodies this kind of serendipitous discovery, showing us how the willingness to embrace chaos and randomness can lead to innovative solutions. This directly ties back into our pattern of folly versus wisdom, contrasting the common perception of foolishness with its unexpected utility. The foolish act of letting go of control can often yield more profound results. This journey of embracing chaos and our own internal shadows is intimately connected with the process of individuation, the Jungian concept of becoming a complete and authentic human being. The fool, with his willingness to confront his own limitations and to step outside societal norms, embodies the process of psychological individuation. This process is not about achieving some idealized vision of perfection, but instead about integrating all aspects of ourselves, the good, the bad, and the often chaotic aspects of our natures. Individuation is not a destination, but rather a journey, and it often involves a willingness to confront the difficult and unpleasant aspects of ourselves. The fool's path is very often an unconventional one, and it directly shows us how embracing all parts of ourselves, even the ones that we find difficult, is an essential step toward wholeness and authentic self-expression. The path toward individuation, therefore, is directly connected to the embrace of the fool archetype, further expanding on our previously established concepts. This understanding provides us with a much clearer view of why the fool's approach to life is so necessary for personal growth. Now, let us consider the core argument that the fool's apparent lack of self-awareness is, in fact, a form of profound self-awareness, that the fool can see beyond the limitations that blind most people. The fool, by not being bound by social conventions and expectations, can often see clearly the absurdities and limitations of those very conventions. Consider the rigid structures of a typical office environment and how these structures can often stifle creativity and innovation. The fool, on the other hand, is free from these kinds of constraints and has the ability to see the situation with a fresh perspective. This challenges our preconceived notions of wisdom and shows us that what is often presented as common sense can often be a barrier to deeper insight. What if conventional wisdom was not wise at all, but instead a kind of collective delusion, a set of shared assumptions that prevent us from seeing things as they truly are? This raises the stakes, prompting us to question the very foundations of our own belief systems, thereby creating a perspective shift. The fool's willingness to be vulnerable, openly displaying imperfections and flaws, is not a sign of weakness, but instead an act of great courage that has the power to reveal deeper truths. Society often demands that we hide our vulnerabilities, that we present a polished and perfect persona to the world, which in turn creates a culture where genuine connection becomes increasingly difficult. The fool, on the other hand, throws caution to the wind, embracing their flaws, and thus invites others to do the same. Think of the conformity versus individuality pattern, and how societal pressure to conform often requires that we hide our true selves, creating a kind of internal tension, whereas the fool, by openly expressing these imperfections, breaks that mold and offers us a new approach. We see this in action anytime someone dares to be themselves, and the way this can often be met with criticism. This example can serve as a powerful reminder that the courage to be vulnerable is an act of genuine strength, and that by expressing our true selves, we allow others to do the same. The fool's act of vulnerability is a direct challenge to the superficiality that often dominates social interactions, and that by breaking this superficiality, we can often reveal deeper truths. It's worth considering the classic story of the emperor's new clothes, where only a child, a fool in the eyes of the court, is willing to speak the truth that everyone else is too afraid to acknowledge. History is filled with real-world examples of fools who have changed the course of civilization through their unconventional perspectives, individuals who were considered foolish in their time, only to be later recognized as geniuses. Consider figures like Socrates, who challenged the established norms of Athenian society with his incessant questioning, and was eventually put to death for his foolish ideas. Or perhaps Galileo Galilei, who was ridiculed for his seemingly outlandish claims about the heliocentric model of the solar system, only to have those claims be confirmed later. These historical examples serve as a testament to the power of unconventional thinking and to the potential for societal progress through foolish ideas. By seeing how these fools challenged the accepted wisdom of their time, we understand why embracing unconventional ideas may be our greatest path toward genuine growth. Remember the court jester from our opening scenario. His seemingly ridiculous actions are directly connected to the examples we have discussed, and like these historical figures, the jester can often save the kingdom, not by fitting in, but by thinking outside the box. These examples show us that the most profound insights can often come from unexpected sources, and that what is considered foolish today may be viewed as genius tomorrow. The fool is not just a historical and psychological figure, but also a pervasive character in literature, a figure who has been used to reveal hidden truths. Characters like Shakespeare's fool in King Lear are not simply comic relief, but are instead powerful sources of commentary on the social absurdities and tragic flaws of the other characters. These literary fools often have a unique ability to see through the facades of power and social status, revealing the true nature of those around them. Consider Don Quixote, whose seemingly foolish idealism challenges the cynicism and pragmatism of the world, highlighting the importance of imagination and courage. These literary fools, rather than merely embodying chaos, are also a powerful lens through which we can understand the complexities of the human condition. The fool is a vehicle for clarity, exposing the pretenses of those around them, and by observing their actions, we can better understand our own tendencies and limitations. This builds upon our previous examples, solidifying the pattern of folly versus wisdom by illustrating how the fool uses folly as a means to reveal the truth. This shows how the fool is a powerful instrument for highlighting the truth. Let us now shift our focus towards practical application. How might we integrate the wisdom of the fool into our own lives? Perhaps it begins by reflecting on the traits we have dismissed as foolish, the qualities that we may have judged harshly in ourselves. What if your biggest weakness is also your greatest strength? What if the very traits that we try to suppress are actually the key to unlocking our unique potential? The first step might be identifying these traits within ourselves and then approaching them with curiosity rather than judgment. This transition is essential. These ideas are not merely theoretical. They have immediate relevance in our day-to-day lives. By making this connection, we're taking steps toward integrating these ideas into a more complete understanding of ourselves. This connection allows us to see how our own personal experiences can act as a mirror reflecting the lessons embodied by the fool archetype. To fully integrate the fool archetype, consider adopting a more playful attitude towards life, actively questioning societal norms, and exploring creative outlets that may have been previously neglected. This doesn't mean abandoning our responsibilities, but instead approaching life with a lighter touch and a willingness to embrace spontaneity. Jungian psychology emphasizes the importance of what is known as active imagination, which is a process that helps us engage with our unconscious mind through a variety of creative techniques, and this kind of exploration can help us get in touch with our own inner fool. By consciously embracing our own unique nature, including our more chaotic side, we can become more whole and fully realized. The more we explore our shadow, the more we are able to discover the true potential of our foolish nature. Try writing down your dreams or simply doodling. This process is about connecting with the unconscious, and that is something the fool does very well. This creative process allows us to find new ways of expression. Embracing vulnerability, as the fool does, is not easy and requires courage to show our imperfections to the world. It's tempting to hide behind a carefully constructed persona, but by doing this, we may miss opportunities for growth and connection. Consider times when your own vulnerability has led to positive outcomes, and how this could shape your perspective. Being vulnerable does not mean being reckless or irresponsible. Rather, it is about being authentic in the way we show up in the world. When we hide our authentic selves, we are also hiding our potential. Think about those times that you spoke the truth, even when it was unpopular. That kind of courage is exactly what the Fool represents. The willingness to be vulnerable in the face of potential rejection is a true mark of courage, and the kind of courage that can radically shift the way that we engage with the world. It's the kind of courage the Fool embodies. A powerful way to integrate the Fool archetype is to engage in a process of shadow exploration through practices such as journaling, dream analysis, or creative expression. As we have said before, our shadow holds the key to unlocking our full potential, and it is through the conscious exploration of these hidden aspects of our psyche that we can begin to understand them. By engaging in these practices, we begin to bring our dark side into the light, which, in turn, allows us to make more conscious choices. As we continue to explore our shadows, we can begin to better understand the nature of our inner Fool. For example, by keeping a journal, we might become more aware of impulsive tendencies that we may have previously ignored. This self-reflection allows us to integrate our shadow, turning our weaknesses into strengths, which also moves us closer to our personal journey of individuation. These steps, though simple, are a powerful path toward integrating all aspects of the self. We have now seen that this is the path that is exemplified by the Fool archetype. Ultimately, integrating the Fool archetype is about embracing the inherent potential for growth and transformation within our own foolish traits. This is not simply about accepting imperfections, but instead about acknowledging that these imperfections are an essential part of the journey to wholeness. By integrating the shadow, we become more fully realized individuals. This synthesis brings all of the previously explored concepts together, creating a clear and powerful narrative. The path to psychological individuation is not one of achieving some impossible ideal of perfection, but instead one of fully embracing the totality of the self, including the shadow. This is the core lesson of the Fool, and by recognizing this message, we move closer to our own personal transformations. We've followed a complex thread, from ancient archetypes to modern psychology, and now it's time to bring all these ideas together and understand the impact this understanding can have on our lives. So, how will you reevaluate the concept of wisdom in your own life? Are you ready to challenge the limitations of social expectations? And are you prepared to embrace your own unique characteristics, even those that you may previously have considered to be flaws? By daring to step outside of the status quo, we create space for the emergence of new possibilities. The road to a truly authentic life is often a road that must be walked with courage. The Fool embodies this courage, and in this way, the Fool's journey is a path toward a more fully realized version of our own true selves. Our differences, in many ways, are our greatest strengths. Remember that this journey is an ongoing process, a lifelong exploration into the uncharted territories of your own inner world. Take the time to explore the ideas that we have discussed today, perhaps by delving deeper into the works of Jung and Nietzsche. The ideas that have been presented are not intended to be taken as some kind of dogma, but rather as a starting point for your own exploration. This journey of self-discovery will look different for everyone, and the most important thing is that you are engaging with this process. This exploration is meant to be a starting point, not an end point, so be curious and keep searching. Our journey today has been an exploration of a hidden dimension within the archetype of the Fool, and as we conclude our discussion, we are left with a question. What if, all along, what we have perceived as foolish was actually the wisest path? Perhaps we have been looking for wisdom in the wrong places. Now, I invite you to engage with the community in the comments, share your own insights, and keep the conversation going. What foolish aspects of your personality have led to your greatest successes? I encourage you to continue exploring these questions. The true wisdom of the Fool, therefore, lies in his ability to hold paradox without seeking resolution, embracing the inherent contradictions of life that others so desperately try to deny. We have explored how the Fool embodies both folly and wisdom, light and darkness, chaos and order, and in this synthesis, we begin to understand how these seeming opposites are necessary parts of a greater whole. The seemingly foolish traits, the impulsiveness, the vulnerability, the willingness to challenge norms, are not limitations, but rather they are the very keys to unlocking creative solutions and profound insights. These are not to be viewed as flaws, but instead as necessary and vital aspects of the human experience, providing us with the very tools to transform not only our individual lives, but the world around us. The Fool reframes the notion of folly by presenting it as a hidden form of genius, a nonconformity that is absolutely essential for societal and personal progress, revealing that the conventional notions of wisdom often limit true insight. We must realize that these two concepts are not truly separate, but instead two sides of the very same coin, just as the shadow and the persona are two sides of a greater whole. Building upon this, the Fool embodies both the light of clarity and the dark of chaos, emphasizing that true understanding requires embracing both aspects, which directly completes the light versus dark pattern that has been explored. Ignoring our dark sides, our perceived flaws, is a barrier to fully experiencing the richness of life. Just as it is impossible to see the full spectrum of color without the absence of light, it is also impossible to find wholeness without darkness. The Fool does not reject any aspect of the psyche, and instead is a living embodiment of wholeness by embracing all of what it means to be human. And in doing so, the Fool guides us on our own path toward individuation, showing us that wholeness is only achievable when our full complexity is both recognized and embraced, rather than denied. The shadow is not an enemy to be defeated, but an ally to be integrated, which brings our understanding of Jungian psychology into a sharper focus. Remember our discussion of the Fisher King. It is the foolish actions that lead him back to the Grail and bring salvation to his people, showing how accepting one's own wounds can often be a path to healing. This all leads us to a core understanding of the Fool's journey as being a metaphor for the path of individuation, the process of becoming a fully realized and authentic human being. The path to wholeness is not a linear path toward some impossible ideal of perfection, but instead a spiral path that leads us to continually embrace all parts of ourselves, including those that are often deemed negative or unwanted. The key steps toward individuation. Shadow integration, embracing chaos, and accepting imperfection are all embodied in the actions of the Fool and serve as a map for our own journey. It is through the embrace of these seemingly contradictory aspects that we begin to see how wholeness can arise from complexity. This journey is not about arriving at a final destination, but instead about an ongoing process of self-discovery. We have seen how many of the great fools throughout history all embody these very qualities. From the literary to the philosophical, we can begin to see that the Fool is not merely an archetype, but also a path that we must all walk. The ability to hold these contradictions together is often what distinguishes the wise from the unwise. We must fully understand that the key to self-actualization is embracing our inner Fool. When viewing the world through the lens of the Fool, we begin to see past societal constructs and limitations, gaining a new perspective that allows us to challenge the status quo. The ability to see the absurdity of life, often seen as the mark of the Fool, is also the mark of a higher level of consciousness, allowing us to see the inherent meaninglessness that underlies all things. But instead of despairing, we find joy in its absurdity. This new perspective not only allows us to change our own individual lives, but to also create the conditions for a better future. The Fool's perspective allows us to not only see how we have been limiting ourselves, but also to identify limitations in the world around us, showing how it is often our most cherished beliefs that prevent us from experiencing life in all of its fullness. What if the things you believed to be true were, in fact, false, and your greatest source of wisdom was found in the questioning of all things? The capacity to question all things is often a gift that is only found within the fool. In integrating the fool archetype into the broader context of the human experience, we discover a central theme that has persisted throughout history: the struggle between conformity and individuality. The fool, throughout history, has often been one of the only voices to challenge oppressive norms, revealing that this archetypal figure is the voice of needed change, which solidifies the conformity versus individuality pattern by giving specific examples of how the fool has often been the first to speak the truth in difficult times. Think of the court jester, whose seemingly harmless jokes often contained harsh social critiques, or the political satirist who uses humor to expose the hypocrisy of those in power. The fool's role in challenging the status quo is essential, as they remind us that progress is often the result of stepping outside the bounds of conventional thought, and that a healthy culture needs figures who are willing to question all things. The fool is not just an archetype, but an integral function of any healthy society, ensuring that we are not all lulled into a state of complacency. The fool is a reminder that the greatest danger is often not chaos, but instead unquestioning conformity. Furthermore, the fool's embrace of chaos is not a rejection of order, but rather a necessary counterbalance that allows creativity and innovation to flourish, which further expands the chaos versus order pattern. Remember how our rigid systems can often become cages, limiting our capacity to expand. The most important human advancements often come when a rigid system is broken, when someone is willing to step outside of the accepted way of doing things and explore the unknown. Consider the scientific revolutions that have changed the world, how so many of them started with someone daring to challenge the accepted norms. This highlights the necessity of a kind of productive chaos that pushes boundaries, creating new possibilities. Embracing chaos and nonconformity is not a path to destruction, but is the only path toward meaningful progress. This understanding reveals the importance of balance, demonstrating that the seeming extremes are not necessarily in opposition, but instead necessary parts of a greater whole. This also moves us past the need for a strict dualistic understanding of reality, revealing a more nuanced appreciation for the complexities of life. Understanding the fool also connects to the broader human quest for authenticity and meaning, as the fool, by being true to its own unique nature, is always able to find its place and purpose in life. The fool's path, although seemingly random, is actually a path of deep self-acceptance that allows for a more genuine connection to all things, as if by understanding one's own nature, the place in the world becomes clear. This is also the path to overcoming many psychological problems, as neuroses often stem from a repression of our natural impulses, which further reinforces the pattern that self-acceptance is the key to happiness. Think of those times when you felt compelled to act in a way that was deemed inappropriate by the standards of those around you, and perhaps you were actually being guided by your deeper self, revealing that these inappropriate actions are often expressions of a core truth. The abstract ideas that we have been discussing here have profound personal implications, as understanding the fool can directly impact everyday life by making us more free to be our true selves. The key is to recognize the wisdom in embracing our unique path, whatever that path may be. This understanding also provides a powerful final transformation by linking the fool to the concept of presence, highlighting the fool's ability to live fully in the moment, free from the anxieties of the future and the regrets of the past. The fool isn't weighed down by the what-ifs or should-haves of existence, and instead is fully immersed in the present moment. This state of being is a key component of true understanding, which ties back to many of the wisdom traditions that emphasize the importance of present moment awareness. The fool's ability to not take life too seriously is actually a path to a deeper appreciation for existence, as it is only when we release the need for a rigid sense of control that we are able to experience the richness and beauty of the world around us. This must be presented as the final step in understanding the Fool, that the apparent lack of seriousness is actually a path to a deeper form of presence. Remember how much time is wasted by worrying about things that may never come to pass. The Fool shows us that it is possible to live without this anxiety, and that in doing so, we become more attuned to our lives. The Fool, therefore, achieves a state of wholeness that serves as a model for individuation by integrating its own shadow and embracing its imperfections. This is how it is able to connect with others in a genuine way, free from pretense and performance. The journey of individuation is not one of conforming to some societal ideal, but instead embracing the entirety of the self, which also integrates the journey of the Fool into the overall theme of finding wisdom in unexpected places. All of the previously discussed ideas come together to present a coherent vision, leaving no major questions unanswered, which also brings the entire narrative to a full resolution. The path of the Fool is not a path toward perfection, but instead a path toward wholeness, and by embracing this path, we learn to truly embrace the human condition. What if it was not our strengths that make us strong, but instead our weaknesses? This notion is what the Fool seeks to reveal, the seeming opposites that we have discussed. Folly and wisdom, light and dark, chaos and order, and conformity and individuality are not mutually exclusive, but instead necessary parts of a greater whole which fulfills all of the core patterns that have been presented so far. The paradox of the Fool lies in its very nature of being both, demonstrating that the perception of duality is, in fact, an illusion. Just as the yin and yang are not separate, but instead interdependent parts of a greater whole, the same is true of the Fool's seemingly contradictory nature, revealing that paradox is a key to understanding this interconnectedness. The need to choose between extremes is what creates so much needless suffering, and understanding the Fool is to understand how to move past the trap of duality. The need for rigid distinctions is a symptom of a limited understanding. The central paradox of the Fool is then resolved, revealing that the seeming contradictions are only superficial, and that a deeper understanding reveals the profound wisdom concealed behind the mask of foolishness. It is the rejection of any part of one's personality that is a form of self-harm, and embracing the entirety of the self is the only path to true peace and understanding, which clearly answers the central question that was posed at the beginning of this discussion. The Fool is wise, and only appears foolish to those that are unable to understand it. Remember the story of the emperor's new clothes. The Fool is the child that speaks the truth, and what might seem like idiocy is actually a deep insight. The need for perfection, for some unattainable ideal, is often the greatest barrier to true self-acceptance. The integration of the Fool archetype brings a sense of playfulness and joy to life, removing the pressure of adhering to rigid societal norms or expectations, releasing tension by concluding that life is meant to be a creative exploration, and that the path of the Fool leads us to fully embrace all aspects of being human. The ability to laugh at ourselves, to embrace the absurdity of existence, is not a sign of weakness, but instead a mark of profound wisdom. The journey toward wholeness is also a journey that is filled with joy, and by embracing our inner Fool, we can learn to approach life with greater levity and humor, which creates a space where personal growth can occur. The journey is about more than just self-acceptance, but instead finding a greater sense of wonder, and that wonder is always present in our lives. Now, the question becomes, how might one integrate the Fool archetype into their own life in a conscious and intentional way? How can we continue to foster the kind of self-reflection that allows for more authenticity? This question opens a door to new territory, highlighting the need for continuous self-reflection and awareness, and revealing that the journey of individuation is never truly completed. The path is a lifelong exploration of the self, and that the answers that we seek are constantly evolving. The understanding that we have discovered today is not an end point, but instead a beginning point. The goal is to continue engaging with the process of discovery, and to not be afraid to embrace the unexpected and unknown, which is the essence of being a fool. This question serves as a hook for further exploration that is beyond the scope of the present discussion, and directly encourages viewers to apply the concepts that they have learned to their own personal experience. If enough individuals embrace the fool archetype, we might see a greater movement toward authenticity, creativity, and a more equitable society, revealing that personal transformation has profound societal implications. The societal transformation will come about as a result of individuals taking responsibility for their own growth, highlighting the necessity of embracing our collective foolishness for a better future. The changes start within, and by embracing the fool within us, we make the world a more accepting and more creative space. This is a call to personal responsibility, asking each of us to take ownership of our personal lives and to use this knowledge to create a more harmonious society. What if the most revolutionary act was simply to be ourselves, fully and completely, without reservation? Let's also remember that the comments section is an open forum where we can explore these concepts in community, and it is through the sharing of our own experiences that the path towards self-discovery is accelerated, creating a sense of shared experience and a community that encourages a continuation of the ideas. The more that we share our insights, the richer the conversation becomes, and thus we all move forward as a community of seekers who share an understanding of the fool. Know that you are not alone on this journey, and that this community is a space to share your thoughts and experiences. The feeling of isolation is often what causes us to become trapped by the status quo, and by coming together, we create something much greater than any one individual. Finally, let's expand our journey further by delving deeper into the works of Jung and Nietzsche, as well as other philosophers and artists who have explored similar themes, as this discussion is only a starting point. This video should be seen as an introduction to further personal learning and exploration, motivating us to engage with these ideas on a deeper level. There is always more to discover, and these great thinkers will be your guides on your journey, which brings our conversation to its final moment. The final statement should echo the opening statement, highlighting the final transformation of the viewer by stating, "What if the wisest among us are the ones who embrace the fool?"